You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? In our third episode, golf and race relations take centre stage in The Long Game. How would Amber and Scott handle this discrimination? You're about to find out. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
If you find yourself in the unique position,
what would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
what would you do with it?
Put yourself in my place.
What would you do?
Oh, well, put yourself in my position. This doesn't sound too good.
What would you do?
How do you want to handle this?
What would you do? Put yourself in my shoes, would you?
What would you do? Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Just put yourself in their shoes.
Now it's your turn.
Well, that was The Long Game.
It was indeed. I liked it. So here's my thought on The Long Game. And, as you all know by now, we're not necessarily getting into the nuances of reviewing the movie, but we are talking about what we would do in real life in the circumstances that was set of the character. So at the risk of being canceled, I will say that this movie from the 50s is about assimilation.
Wow, you used the A word.
A word, definitely known to have so many people. Yeah, so the gentleman who winds up forming the golf team, among this ragtag group of students and putting them out on the golf course as the school's first golf team, was big on assimilation. Guys dress this way, act this way, wear this way.
Well, let's be more specific here. It was the school's first golf team, but they were all of Hispanic descent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, of course. But it was the first team, and the person in charge, the coach who assembled this team, very much wanted to normalize Mexicans in golf. And so he had a larger agenda than just some kids playing golf. He wanted to make it so that became normal. So, as his own battle of trying to get into a private club, he was denied because people are accustomed to getting Mexicans on the field in any other role except for a caddy.
Yeah, and let's not gloss over it too much. This movie was a golf movie that had very little to do with actual golf. I mean, it was a racism movie. I mean, let's just call it kind of what it was. It was a time, a movie about the racism at the times, which I guess I never really thought about the fact of, obviously,
White men.
Well, and that is the interesting thing, because I am pretty much in that class that would never be discriminated against, except like in 2024, where now that entire combination makes me discriminated against. I mean, not really in the sense that these people were, but you know what I mean. But yeah, no, I didn't even realize that there was that much racism against Hispanics at that point. I guess I never really thought about it because there's so much black racism that we focus on in this country and all of that I never really thought about it from that perspective.
I'm going to disagree with you there because as a white guy saying that we focus on black discrimination, I think someone of Mexican descent or Asian descent or Indian descent might disagree with you. It's just a matter of what we see and what we're exposed to. So there's still plenty of that, especially if you look back to the 50s. In the 50s, women were very much marginalized. So discrimination against everybody who wasn't a white straight male, I think, is pretty rampant. Obviously, still so today in just different ways. So if you were either the main character who was the coach of the high school golf team, or if you were the owner of the country club who didn't want a Hispanic out on the field, or one of the players that the tournament that was in the tournament. I mean, what would you have done in any of those circumstances?
Yeah, it's very interesting for me because I truly have never been discriminated against simply because of the way I look. So
Well, you look funny though. Some people discriminate against.
well, maybe. I mean, I think maybe having that background would definitely be different. I mean, for me, I'd be like, fuck that. Like, no, I don't. You're not gonna discriminate against me. I would be just causing trouble. I would be knocking rocks through the diner's window.
So you'd be one of the the main character out of the 5 ragtag high school kids
Yeah, pretty much.
that was railing against the establishment.
I wouldn't have any of that shit at all. Now, it also has a little bit to do with my own personality, but I've never had to think about fitting in somebody else's world in a way. I mean, mildly when I was a child, like age 8 to 13, I lived in South Georgia. I moved there from North Dakota. North Dakota is very, very white. And when I moved to South Georgia, it was not at all. And it was the one period of my life that I did actually somewhat feel like a minority where I was, because it really was mostly black people there, and I myself was white. But even then, I never felt like, oh, I have to act a certain way because I'm white. I just was who I was. And I know that for a lot of people who have been discriminated against, whether it's by race or by gender, religion, I mean, a whole host of things, that is something they have to think about on a daily basis. Like, what do I need to do to be able to fit in society? So, and I think because I just have never thought about that, the idea of someone just going against me because of the way I look or anything like that, I would have absolutely none of that.
You know, it's funny because really in today's society, I think it's probably less about fitting in and more about I'm different, God damn it, accept me and celebrate me. You know, that's just, I think, the shift that we're seeing as a society. I can obviously speak as a woman and say that I've certainly been in male-dominated environments and suffered the stereotype. I remember one job I had and all the executives were male. And I had a manager job, but I was always treated and perceived as a secretary. Like, oh, honey, can you go, fill up our waters kind of a thing? And only because of being the female.
Yeah, that's it's a very weird perspective.
But today's world, we're not so big on assimilation. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Tom Brokaw, when he was guesting on Meet the Press, used the word assimilation, and wow, he was really attacked through social media and got an earful. And I don't think he meant anything bad by it, but just using the word was not well received. So, we live in a different world where people just perceive assimilation differently than they used to, especially in the 1950s when this movie was set.
Yeah, it's interesting because I truly don't feel like I can speak from a place of knowledge. This is one of those subjects that the more I talk about it, the more I'm going to come across looking like an idiot. But I recognize that. I do. I mean, I understand that even though I joked about being discriminated against these days, I have no idea what it's like to be a woman or to be Hispanic or discriminated against for one of a ton of different reasons. So I would my first instinct would always be, oh, hell no, because it's not something I'd have to deal with in my day-to-day life normally. I think if you do, your reaction is going to be a little different.
Well, you even think back to movies when we saw The Color Purple, the remake, the film, and one of the characters, oh gosh, her name's going to skip my mind, the one that Danielle Brooks played, she was pretty much that, oh, hell no kind of person. And she got thrown in prison in a little town jail cell for a very very long time to try and break her spirit. So it's easy out of context and out of time periods to say you would be all about the Hell No, but, throughout history, Hell No has had some pretty dire consequences.
Oh, yeah. And like I've said, I know that the longer we talk about this, the more I'm going to come across
maybe
this
we should cut this one short.
as an idiot. But again, I do recognize that in that I just don't have the tools from my life experience to properly deal with that.
But, at any point in history, though, to be someone who wants to further an idea, a concept, an agenda, because, as the character, the groundskeeper character, was sharing his experience from the war and how he was sent into, World War II without a gas mask, and how the guy who was sent into, I believe it was the Vietnam War.
The World War One.
World War One. Okay, so the first guy was World War One, and this guy
the first one was World War One. The second one was World War II. This was in 1956. Vietnam hadn't even happened yet.
I think we're talking about first and second differently. Anyway, how the one who served in the earlier war, World War One, didn't have a gas mask, and the guy in World War II was saying he didn't get a parade, and that those are very different places to look at. How you were treated as a Hispanic in the United States military, and that, generations before us do change where we are, what status quo looks like. And that's always a reason to push back and question norms in general, I think.
And it really is, and has been for a long time. I think you're right. Every time you go back a generation, it might be, I've had it tough, but they had it tougher.
Yep.
And it's constantly all the way back on that for God knows how long. So
when kids complain about school and, your great-great-grandparent nowadays, it might have been your mom and dad back in the day, but say, when I went to school, I had to walk through 5 feet of snow, and there was no snow plows back then, and there was no school buses, and
it was uphill both ways, right?
I'd like to see that road. So yeah, it's important for people to question authority, to push back, to further what normal looks like, to create changes in our society, because without those people, we would still be living in a very dark age.
Yeah, no, it's very true. So, okay. Anything else? Any final thoughts here?
No, I enjoyed the film a lot, and if you like history pieces with a little bit of, it was, even though it had this undertone, it was still a light movie. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was, you knew what the movie was going into it. You could tell. It's interesting. It was based on a true story, but that's how a lot of these movies get made. If you have enough stories to tell throughout all of history, eventually you'll find the true ones that make good movies. And that's really what this was. So,
final words, fight the power.
I'll leave with that.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Next time.